The time has come. Please join the stage. We are going to have game nights and untold stories, the behind the scenes of game nights. And nobody better to talk about that than the legendary Jimmy Wong and Josh Lee Kwai.
Yay.
Thanks.
Oh, do we have our outline?
Oh, we need the outline.
I'll bear back. Entertain them, Josh.
Hello, hello. Thanks everyone for showing up. I'm gonna pull this a little closer to me. Thank you, thank you. Who out there was in the blue section yesterday? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So, obviously we didn't rehearse this a lot because we forgot a piece. We are going to have a pretty casual chit chat up here. We're gonna tell some stories from game nights in the command zone. Most of them that we've never really told before. We've been doing this for almost 10 years now.
Yeah, and as a result, a lot of wild, crazy things have happened. Near catastrophes, actual catastrophes, things that we've covered up, mistakes. So many things that you see on the end final episode of our podcast or game nights. There is sometimes a huge story that happens to get it to that point.
So they'll be in maybe no particular order, just some funny things we thought you might like to hear about. And then at the end, we'll open it up. Maybe we'll have 10 or 15 minutes for questions if anybody wants to ask us anything at the end there. So you want to just jump into it?
Yeah, let's get right into it. All right,
Okay.
So the first story that we have to tell is about one of our favorite people on the planet. It's the one and only Austin Post Malone.
Right, so yes.
Yes, one
Just
fan.
had an album released yesterday, right? Has everyone
check it
heard
out. It's called Austin. It's really beautiful.
I was listening to the album all yesterday morning.
It was very nice, yeah.
So I think we've told the story of how Posty, how we met Posty.
Met him, yeah.
Yeah, it was like an Instagram message and...
At first, an ignored Instagram message.
Right, we ignored the message. We weren't sure, we didn't even know it was there. We don't check our Instagram messages that much.
Yeah.
But eventually we get in touch with Post Malone, and it's less than a week later that he's flying to Los Angeles to be on game nights. So it all happened very, very fast. And so the day we're filming game nights, first of all, we have to say, Posty is a night owl. And by that I mean wakes up at like 4 p.m. and stays up until 8 a.m.
Yeah,
so
he's on European time here, but in America.
Yeah. So if you're hanging out with Post Malone, you're staying up all night. So we're filming game nights. We hung out with him for the first time ever the night before, and we literally had to stay up until 7 a.m. And then we go to sleep. This is not our regular schedule. This is his regular schedule. So he shows up at 5 p.m. to shoot game nights. We're all like...
Here we go. Yeah. Normally we start at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a different timing-wise.
So we begin filming the episode, and it takes a long time to shoot game nights. Usually the games take between 5 and 6 hours, just because there's a lot of intricacies to where you play the cards, how you say things. We've got visual effects that are going to happen, and we don't know what cards people are going to draw. So sometimes on the spot we're like, oh, that's really cool, and we have to think of what's going to happen, and then have people sort of pantomime things in the right order. So I don't know. It's probably like 90 minutes into filming the game where we decide to take a break. So everyone can use the restroom, stretch their legs, because it is going to be a 5 or 6 hour thing.
Yeah, the chairs aren't that comfortable. It gets a little hot in the room, and so usually every time we film game nights, we take 2 to 3 breaks. Someone has to go to the bathroom. Someone has like hey, I need to think about this turn for 15 minutes. Everyone just goes and takes a break, comes back out.
So what happens is we get up to go to the break, and on the way out, Posty accidentally trips on one of the cords.
Doesn't fall over, just sort of like nudges it, and it's a really crowded room, right? About the size, I would say, like from Josh to maybe the end of this stage here is about how wide it is.
It's that classic thing where everybody that comes into the game night set, the first thing they say is, oh, it's way smaller than I thought it would be. Yeah, and it's our fault. We should have taped down all the cords, but there was one that was just not taped down. He trips over it a little. We go downstairs. We're just taking a little break, and Jake comes down and he says that that cord that Posty tripped over was the power cord to the cameras. And I don't know if you know anything about how these digital cameras work, but if they're turned off suddenly, the memory card doesn't have time to encode
and finish the clip.
Footage and finish it off so it can corrupt the file, which means your footage is gone.
So you still have a file that's like 3 gigabytes big, but you can't open it if you plug it into the computer. You don't know if the information up until that point is still there.
So we're like, oh crap, we just lost the first 90 minutes of footage with Post Malone. We don't know him very well. We hung out with him one time all night the night before, and we're not sure if we go to him and say,
hey.
So we got to start over now. And by now it's like, 8:30 or 9 at night or something crazy. So we don't know what's going to happen if we have to tell him that. Jake's like, I'm Googling it, I'm calling people, let's see if we can figure out, just take a long break. Just talk to him about stuff.
Nothing is wrong.
Yeah. So we're just like, okay, so we're just like shooting,
Yep.
We're just telling stories, talking with him for as long as we can. And in the back of our heads the whole time, we're like,
what if?
Because it's possible. And we know that this would never happen after getting to know Posty. He's like the nicest guy in the world. But at the time, we don't know him that well. So it could literally just be he's like, you know what? I don't have time to start over. I'm going back, and that's it. And we never get the Post Malone episode. Like, that's worst case scenario in my head.
Yeah.
So Jake comes down, and he eventually figures it out. He solves it. He saves the footage. We go back up. We can start from where we left off. Posty never knows that this even happens.
Woo.
In fact, Posty, if you're listening to this, that's the first time he's heard this story. He didn't know that this ever happened. Yeah, that's right.
Actually, we hid it from him the entire time. And there's our amazing Jake Boss. That's a costume he wore for something.
The Strixhaven videos.
Thing. Yeah.
And we wanted to give Jake a shout for saving us in that moment, and also because he's getting married like roughly right now.
Today, yeah.
So
if you follow Jake on Twitter, send him a message. Congratulations. Now
so that was a very near miss, and then the biggest possible deal that it could be, right? Because it's the biggest guest we've ever had. Yeah.
And you would think that after doing the podcast at that point for 7 years, that we would be over the hurdle of missing things like that. But we have lost footage before, and we always have to pay for it in blood. No, we pay for it by sometimes going all the way to re-record entire episodes. One time when we were podcasting, I was back home in Seattle and Josh was in LA. I think it was like over winter break. We podcasted and I realized I did not turn on the computer to record the microphone, and instead it was recording from the computer audio. And the computer was like 10 feet away from me. So I'm about to send Josh the file, and I listen to it and I'm like, wait a minute, why does it sound awful? And so without telling him, I basically laid the tracks down of my really far away mic, and I put my mic back up to my face, and I listened to every single thing I said across like an hour-and-a-half podcast and re-recorded it line for line, bit by bit, matching my intonation, matching everything else, and slipping it in and making sure it lined up, and then sending it to Josh, be like, here's the file, it's perfect.
I literally never knew that story until like maybe a year afterwards, where he mentioned it, and I was like, wait, what? Which episode?
The entire episode.
He's a good actor. That's what we learned.
It worked. It took me about 4 hours to do that, though, so it was like 6 hours of recording that day for a single small error.
We had a set review episode, I forget which one, where we had bought a new camera.
Yep.
We were all excited. We bought like a fancy new camera, like the same camera they shoot the Avengers on, and we were like, this is going to be awesome. All our stuff's going to look great.
For a podcast, yeah.
And we set it up, and we're like, the picture looks awesome. We record this set review. It's like 2.5 hours long. And because the camera was new and we're stupid, we mounted the lens to it wrong.
Yeah, so when you mount a lens on the camera, it needs to be perfectly slotted in. And it was on this adapter, and it just was maybe a centimeter off, like to the side tilted. And as a result, half the picture was crystal clear and the other half was blurry. And when I was like, we can fix this, I tried to do some stuff. I was like, nope, it just looks worse.
So we just looked at each other and we're like, do we have to go in and re-record the set review right now?
And we did.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So I think it was C20 or something. It was like a big Commander set review. So it was 2 hours and 16 minutes.
I bet my voice sounds scratchy in that one.
Yeah, probably.
There was an episode, we have focus problems sometimes. There was an episode, it was early on. I think it was like episode number, I think I might have a slide of it here. Let me find it. No, maybe I don't. Wait. No. I don't want to give away what we're going to talk about in a second. There's an episode early on, like the 4th episode, where it was my fault. I set up the interview cameras for everything, and Vinny was in it. And Vinny was just way out of focus for whatever reason.
I think he sat closer to the camera, and someone that sat further back, and we'd focus for this person, but not for this. And we just didn't change it.
So as a result, I just had to not show Vinny very much during that episode. We just didn't cut to him.
Yeah.
Sorry, Vinny.
Sorry, Vinny.
Sorry, Vinny.
Yeah, new equipment is always a challenge because a lot of times we get it and we're like, yeah, I think it's how it works. Yeah, let's just use it and try it out. And
there was just an episode of Extra Turns that just came out. And we had a memory card fill up in the middle of the episode.
It doesn't make a sound. It doesn't tell you.
That just came out. Yeah.
The light just turns off. And if you're in the middle of a game, you're not like looking up. You're like, is it still going? So turns off halfway through the game.
So we go back. We're like, the game's over. Good job. If you haven't seen it, I won't spoil it. But then we get back and we're loading in the footage, and one of the cameras, just the overhead camera too. So it's
the most important
one. Just didn't have the second half of the game. So we had to go back in, have somebody read every play, and just do the hands part of like, play this card, then what did I do? Then you tap this mana, then you did that, the whole thing. So we're showing people talking during the episode. That's from an hour before when this part was shot. Now we can't change the outcome. We just have to do everything the same. But hopefully it's seamless, and nobody posts in the comments about it, so no one can tell.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can tell.
Yeah.
So yeah, most of the above that we just talked about are like technical issues where the power goes out or memory card fills up. I don't use the right microphone. Something dies hardware-wise, or sometimes even the memory card will just fail on you.
Yep.
Sometimes we'll have the cords to a podcast, like the microphone cord. You can't hear it when you're going, and you play it back, and it's like, and you're like, oh no, the cord died. We had no idea. Yeah. So.
But also Magic is just like super complicated.
Yeah.
So we have all kinds of mistakes that are not technical related. They're just related to the game of Magic. I mean, one of the things we run into constantly is like, when you go to film an episode of a gameplay video, you don't know when it's going to end. Like, a game can take 7 turns, a game can take 14 turns, and those are vastly different undertakings, right? One of those things is going to be way more work than the other. And so we always are going into these things not knowing necessarily where the end point is. So this slide, which is the Game Nights Commander Legends episode, which had Rachel.
Weeks for the first time on Game Nights.
Was that her first time?
I think so.
She wasn't a member of our team yet, and then Joe Johnson was also there. What happened when we went to film this is that, and you never saw this because we eventually couldn't use it, but Joe got a Scute Swarm out on like turn 3.
No, I think it was earlier, turn 2, and then just had a bunch of landfall triggers.
We couldn't draw a removal spell, and by like turn 5, he had like 136.
No, it's like 512 or something.
Whatever.
And he had a way to pump them all up. We just all instantly died. So and the game itself was like 15 minutes.
And we were like, we're really sorry, Joe, but we don't think we can have that be the episode.
You won.
Yeah.
But not really.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to play another game now. So we started over. So there is a lost episode of Game Nights out there that we've always thought about releasing. I don't know now that we've given away the ending if it would still be interesting. Yeah.
Okay. It'd be pretty short.
Maybe we will. We did do all the interviews for it just in case. It's basically a lot of Jimmy, Rachel, and I being like, do you have an answer to Scooch? I don't.
I can't
Hope I draw a board wipe. Did you? Nope.
I did end up putting Scute Swarm in more decks as a result of that episode, though.
You monster.
Yeah. Another thing that actually will affect a lot of our episodes, and we'll talk about this one for a bit, are rules mistakes. So whenever you play Commander, I don't think people realize this, but in every single Commander game that's being played over there right now, I would guarantee there's about 1 to 3 full-blown rules mistakes or something that doesn't get done right. And it's just inevitable unless you have judges sitting there. And even then, there will still be rules mistakes because Commander gets so complicated, but you also get wrapped up in the game that you miss something, you forget something that happens, or it's a new card, and you just don't know what it does.
Yeah, I would venture to say, having worked on gameplay videos for the last, 7 years, I doubt anybody has ever played a full game of Commander where there hasn't been at least a rules mistake made. Like, because we have
maybe that Scute Swarm episode because it's so fast.
I bet we still made it. We probably got the count wrong or something. Yeah. Because all the time we will, in editing, be like catching a mistake, right? The game's done, it's been played, the winner's been crowned, but a mistake got made, and now we have to figure out how to deal with it for the show. We can't change the ending, we can't change the outcome. Can we make the mistake look not like a mistake? So our example here, we have a few examples. Our first one is from the latest episode of Game Nights, the Lord of the Rings episode. You remember that one with
Watch
Sholo
it with Sholo and Jacob? Yeah, it's a great one.
All right, so here's the scenario, and here's what really happened when we played it on the day. There's a point in the game where I attack Jimmy with Pippin, the Archon of Sun's Grace, and my commander, Tom Bombadil, which is a 9/9 at the time. Sholo casts Boros Charm on my Tom Bombadil, giving it double strike. So this is now a lethal attack to Jimmy.
How dare he, by the way?
Jimmy has seen this coming. He swords to Plowshares, my Tom Bombadil, therefore living through the attack.
Great
simple,
play,
right?
Johnny.
Totally simple. If you can look at this image right here, you can probably already tell what's wrong and how I played it wrong, which is that Pippin is tapped. Pippin has vigilance.
Should not be tapped, which is the whole point of the card.
Yeah.
You can attack with it, and then you can tap it to use its ability as well as attacking.
Yeah, but in my head, I was like, it's a mother of runes,
Yeah.
right?
And in my mind, I'm like, oh, Josh is tapped out. His Pippin can't be used. I can swords his creature.
So we're like 2 weeks later in editing when we go, oh, crap.
Not only did you play this wrong, every single comment is going to tell us we played it wrong, and people are going to be wondering, oh, no, did this change?
This would have changed the outcome of the game. Jimmy would have died there.
He couldn't have done the Swords of Plowshares.
Yeah, so again, we can't change what happened. Jimmy is going to live, but
because the game's been filmed, the set is no longer there. Sholo and Jacob are somewhere else filming.
Yep.
We cannot change the outcome of the game. That has been set in stone.
So what the editors come up with is they make it look like Jimmy plays a Solitude. Because Jimmy has no open mana. But this is a free removal spell that Jimmy can play. Then I tap Pippin, even though in real life I didn't, but we just record the audio later. I tap Pippin to protect Tom Bombadil.
So now we're back at the same board state that I did cast the Swords to Plowshares.
And in response to tapping Pippin, he casts the Swords to Plowshares. Tom Bombadil dies. He lives. The same amount of life is gained. And therefore we can move on with the game, and nobody in the audience knows that the mistake happened.
Now, we have to be very clear here as to why we have to do this. Some of you might be thinking, oh, they're cheating. They're changing the game itself. But this is not the case. When we make game nights, we need to make a show that is accurate to the game, because otherwise it becomes distracting to the audience. And when that happens, the literal quality of the episode declines, and everything about what you're watching doesn't feel as good, because now, oh no, they're making huge gameplay mistakes. This is taking away from just me being able to watch a game and enjoy it. And remember, the outcome of the game, what actually happens, does not change.
Yeah, I think if a lot of you are smart Magic players, and if we played the episode as we played it, you would be thinking the whole time, but Tom Bombadil should still be alive, and Jimmy should be dead. And so everything that happens from that point forward is invalidated in your mind as you're watching it. And it's just distracting. So we don't want that for the audience, right? We want them to follow along with the game. And also, we feel a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of people, we hear from a lot of you today as we're doing our signing that I saw game nights, and that's what got me into Magic, or that's what got me into Commander.
You taught me how to play Commander.
Yeah, so we don't want to teach people wrong. So it's also a lot of responsibility as far as that's concerned. Even then, we don't catch every mistake.
Yeah.
There's still some that sneak through, and I'm sure you've noticed them, like when Craig used the fetch land to get the wrong land type.
3 times in a row, by the way. No one at the table caught that.
Yeah. So that definitely still some sneak through, but that's the reason why we catch these and we fix them when we can.
Yeah, we feel a duty to the viewers to represent the game correctly as well, because that, again, we're making an entertainment product in game nights, and we want to make sure that it is delivered in a way that when you watch it, you go, cool, that worked. That makes sense to me as a new player, an experienced player, whatever, and you don't spend your time typing in the comments, everything doesn't make any sense anymore, you can't do this anymore because X, Y, and Z happened, and then it takes away from what we're actually trying to deliver.
Yeah, I want to give a big shout out to Manson, Murph, and Jake, who are our editors. Yeah.
Is that him?
I think that's Manson back there.
Manson.
Yeah, that's Manson back there. Yeah, Manson.
Go Manson.
Because they're the ones that these days have to deal with it when we make mistakes. I'm sure they're grumbling about, Jim,
that wasn't a cheer of joy. That was a grunt of dismay.
Josh just read the card? It says vigilant right on it. Listen, That was like 6 weeks before anybody had seen the card. I didn't know what it did.
Yeah, especially when you're doing game nights with new cards, you just sometimes, that's the easiest mistake. Oh, I had no idea that's what it did. But there are times when you should know what it does because the card's been around in Magic for, decades at this point.
Yeah, the very first instance I can remember of us fixing something like this was the 8th episode of Game Nights, which is an old one, and I won't blame you all if you haven't seen it, but there was a moment.
It's a pre-con episode with Cassius and Josh Kim, a.k.a. Zell.
Yeah. So there was a moment in the game where Jimmy blocks a Marin. I am attacking him with a Marin and another creature, and he blocks my Marin with his Karmic Guide. And then at the end of combat, we resolve damage, kill the Karmic Guide, but Karmic Guide has protection from black.
Oh, no, and Marin is black-green.
So what I had to do to fix it was I made it look like Jimmy blocked a Saproling with his Karmic Guide and my Marin with a Phantom Nantuko. And you can see here how I've had to cut out his hand and move it over. So he's placing the card on a different card. But in the real life, you can see how the Phantom Nantuko on the Marin
has
looks.
The glare, yeah. It looks like it should be on the other side.
The light doesn't look right on it because I've had to move it over there. Yeah. So this is Jimmy reaching over, and he would have to reach a lot farther to get to the far end of the. But we faked it, yeah.
And look at Cassius, very happy that I'm reaching onto his playmat to do this block.
This is the episode where Cassius didn't do anything because he didn't draw a red land or something.
And then wins at the last moment with a giant
He's
burst spell,
salty the whole game.
So yeah, if you think, oh no, look, they're doing this, it's degrading the episode, I'm taking a hit to my ego by making a really bad block for the outcome.
He had to sacrifice for the audience, right? Because I was like, Jimmy, I'm sorry. I have to make it look like you made a bad block. Because you can make a decision-based mistake, but we don't want to make a rules-based mistake.
Yeah. And I make plenty of those, so both, actually.
I remember he was like, fine.
Yeah, I mean,
it can't change the outcome. Again, it didn't matter. Cassius was still going to win at the end.
Yep.
Jimmy just looks slightly dumber.
Yep. It's cool. I'm used to it. It's okay. Thank you.
This is how much he loves you.
Yeah. Remember me fondly. Okay, this is. Thank you. All right, this one is from the Game Nights, the first episode again where we had the power incident with Game Nights Posty tripping over a power cord. There was another instance in this episode that no one caught when it happened, and this is, I think, actually a really common mistake that happens in Commander games.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is, how does haste work?
So I had a Garth out, and I had an Anger in my graveyard. So I activated my Garth because it had haste. And then Posty uses his commander. How do you pronounce it?
Marieke Barrett? Marieke? MRB. Mr. B.
Everybody knows the card we're talking about. So Posty steals my Garth with his commander, and then and then taps it to use it, but he doesn't have haste because he doesn't have an Anger in his graveyard. So we missed this on the day because everyone's like, well, Josh used it, and your brain just kind of says,
it has haste.
Oh, one player used it, it's probably fine. So in editing, we find this. And you know what the funny thing is? Posty called me 2 weeks after we recorded the episode. He'd been replaying the game in his head, and he said, hey, I think I used your Garth on the turn that I took it. This is 2 weeks after we recorded it.
Yeah, the episode's not out, so he just knew in his head, and this is how brilliant of a guy he is, by the way.
Yeah, this is when you kind of get oh, this guy's pretty smart, because he's been replaying every play of the game and caught the mistake. We are looking at footage for weeks and barely caught it. And he's like, I think, and I'm like, we just caught that, actually. And he's like, what are you going to do about it? And I said, the way the guys figured out to fix it was they're going to have you play the Lightning Greaves you played a turn early, and then equip it to the Garth so that you have haste.
Haste, yeah.
Because he did play a Lightning Greaves that game, which was lucky. He played it a turn later. So we hid this thing where we do this a lot. You'll see in this angle, a player could put a card down. Now in this angle, it's hard to see what exactly the card is. And then we cut to the overhead angle as their hand's moving away.
Oh, hey, look, Lightning Greaves.
Oh, Lightning Greaves is right there. Yeah, that Lightning Greaves is digital. It's not really on the table at the, at this point in the game.
Next turn.
Yeah, it's been masked out. So that's how we fixed that particular problem. Was we just had him play his Lightning Greaves early. Lightning Greaves equips for free, so we didn't need any extra mana. And we had to flub, I think, a little how much mana he had available. We'll do that sometimes.
But again, we can't re-record this. We can't bring Post Malone back to the studio to replay the entire game from that point onwards. You have to deal with it in a situation that makes it work.
Yep. So you're trying to get to the point where he's activated Garth and it was a legal play. And now everything is as it was from that point forward.
Yeah, because, that's just how it goes. All right, another one, and this is another one that I took it. Jimmy Wong, hero of the world. So Prof in this episode, as you remember, he finally wins an episode of Game Night, spoiler alert. And he does so by just trampling over us with his commander.
The merged,
Mishra.
Yeah, so I'm sure we remember this episode because Prof went off with this Mishra merge card.
And when you merge it, it enters the battlefield tapped and attacking. Now, what keyword does it not have? Haste. Right?
So what happens is this turn, he plays a Morag.
Oh, extra combats for his newly created giant attacking creature.
So on the day, he plays a land, untaps, swings again with the merge card. But he shouldn't have been able to swing on the extra attack because it does not have haste and it didn't enter the battlefield tapped and attacking this time.
Yeah.
This is something we actually managed to catch on the day, but it was like during somebody's interview.
Yeah, so the game had already been finished, the outcome had been decided, and oh crap.
So what we decided to do is just have Prof play an Expedite.
Yep.
And that he had played a Dockside Extortionist like the turn before or something, so he had like a bunch of treasure.
Mana,
So we could just have him say, and I'll sacrifice a treasure. And if you pay close attention, I think you'll notice that he has the same amount of treasure later that he had before. But it's hard to tell, right? So, yeah.
Yep. And that second swing obliterated my board.
Yeah, that was pretty much the game-winning swing.
Yeah, 100%.
Which he wouldn't have been able to do. But it was too late to go back and film the whole episode.
Yeah, so haste is just a very complicated thing, apparently.
Yeah. We wanted to touch on scripting here because one of the most common criticisms that Game Nights gets is that, people say it's scripted.
Yeah, the games are scripted. You are basically not playing a game. You're playing something that's predetermined from the start.
Yeah, I'm sure you've all heard people say things like that because that couldn't possibly be that crazy. Couldn't have those crazy things all happen always. You must be laying out like what everybody does. I mean, what would you consider to be scripting, Jimmy?
Scripting, I would consider, we would be, everyone sits around the table and we go, Josh, we rolled the dice, today is your turn to win, and we have written out every single turn, every single card that's going to get drawn and played in interaction, and we're going to play it by the book.
Yeah, then you're gonna cast this, and then they're gonna play that,
and then everyone, we all need to ooh at the same time. Okay, it's a brand new card, so everyone needs to go shiny. Okay, thank you. All right, next turn is gonna happen. Jimmy, I'm sorry you're not hitting another land drop, but we're doing it for the lulz. Josh, you're only gonna draw 20 cards this game.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
On.
Yeah.
Sorry, Josh. They're gonna mill you out again.
Again, yeah. We just think it's so funny.
Yeah, it's crazy to even try and script. I'm sure you've all seen our episodes, and we do those little sketches for our ads in the middle. And it's really hard to even script out like a single turn for like a joke, because we're constantly like, well, if they did that, they would have to have these in play. This would have to be in their graveyard, like crap. And then why would this wouldn't work because that other thing's out? Oh, we got to change that card.
Yeah.
So it'd be crazy to script the game, but we do have writers that are credited on our episode. And I think that might be part of what throws people off.
Right.
Because there are some things that we do have written. So, like when we do the deck explanations at the start where my deck does this and there's some punny things people say, we'll have writers come in and help people like be able to because we found like at first we used to just say, hey, what's your deck do? And the person would be like, well, it
wants to attack, and I think, and it doesn't sound great.
And they all started sounding the same. So we said, you know what if we give a sort of framework, and if you want to change the words a little bit, it'll also make sure that, we keep it short and simple and it makes sense. So we have the writers do that. Character barks. So when a character comes in and said, like, what was, it was in one of the episodes where the character says, time to die, and she's a dice rolling character.
Yeah.
All the things the characters say, those need to be written, so our writers will write that stuff.
Yeah, we'll have the writers in the room, and if someone's trying to explain a turn and they're just fumbling over the words, and by the way, sometimes the interviews are 3 hours long, and by the end of it, your brain is cooked. So they can come in and help, like, okay, don't say play there, say cast, because you just said play the second before. And so they'll help mold some of the interview bits as well.
Yeah, when we sit people down in the interview chair, there'll be somebody who has recorded every move, transcribed everything that's happened in the game, and then they will be going down, and then this happened, and then you played this. What'd you think about it? And the person will, a lot of times will just say, tell us what you thought about it, don't worry about the camera. And they'll sort of loosely explain it, and then we'll say, cool, that part of it is interesting, can you expand on that? And that's where the writers can help them just sort of like tie thoughts together. What if you say, now that we know kind of how you felt about it, what if we just helped you craft how to say it?
Yeah.
And but again, that's after the game. The interviews happen after the game's played, so we can't change the game, but we are trying to help make the flow of the thing, seem good. We want everybody to seem like they're very well spoken, and but obviously we always get up there and they're like, they played a Soul Ring, and you're like, I don't know. Of course it's good.
Yeah, ramped. It's a turn 2 ramp style. And we've been a little meta about it a couple of times too, just because we understand the story of Game
You have
Night
to say something about the cards though, because the card has to be on screen for a certain amount of time so you can all register it.
Yeah.
So if you don't say anything, then what are we showing? We're just hearing silence while we see the card, or else we got to cut away from the card and nobody had time to look at it. So it's that tug and pull.
I also think it's really important for people to think about this. When you're watching Game Nights, you are the intended audience, but you're also not the intended audience, right? It's both you and someone that may literally have never played the game before, or this is their first episode. So when someone plays a turn 2 Farseek and they talk about why ramp is good, you may have heard it for the 50th time, and it may be someone else's first time. So we can't forsake that first-time viewer for the 50th person viewer, because everyone is watching our shows at different times. They're coming into it because they like the guest or the set or whatever it is. So I think keep that in mind too when you're watching any content, even movies. You're like, why is the bad guy having a speech at the end? I've seen this speech every time. It's like, well, you kind of need that for a lot of people. That for them it helps create the world of the movie a little bit more too.
Okay, so now we want to move into some funny production stories. So that's all editing stuff that we fix, and we do that. I'd say every episode has a thing like that. So
yeah, not to the degree of like the expedite or whatever, but sometimes it'll get to like, okay, well, we need to move some stuff here.
I remember one time we had to sort of lie about the amount of cards Lady had in her hand because she had Avengers Journal out, and we needed her to gain a certain amount of life because we'd miscalculated some stuff.
Yeah. Stuff like that. Small things like that happen all the time.
Okay, here's a funny story. So for this episode, we did a Phyrexian Praetors episode. This was right before Phyrexia All Will Be One. And Lady Danger does all our set design and production design, and she'd done this really cool set. It was this black, like Phyrexian. There was these tubes in the back behind us that had like black oil going through them. So she'd rigged up this big tube, and there was black oil going from it. We had this pump in the bathroom to the side, so it was actually pumping the oil through the tubes.
And every time there's a bubble in it, you would see the difference between the background and the black glistening oil inside. It was really cool.
She showed it to us, and we looked at it, and we're like, at first you can't really see that anything's moving, even though it is.
Yeah.
And what we learned is if there's some bubbles in there, you can kind of see. But there's no way to just get bubbles in there without, there was a bucket. And the bucket had where the tube went out and where it came back in, right? And the way that you would get bubbles into the tube so you could see that it was moving was you would just lift up one of the tubes and then put it back in the bucket. And you had to do that like every 10 seconds.
And at different intervals too, so it wouldn't be like super regular.
So it's sort of random. So we're like, well, I guess we can just have some people in there that are just going to pick up the tube for 6 hours while we film the game. We had 2 new people who had only been with us for like a couple of weeks. It was Eric and Megan.
Welcome to the command zone.
Yeah.
Yay, Megan.
Megan's right there. Megan's right there, everybody.
Thank you, Megan.
Megan, yep, everybody.
Buffer than she's ever been now as a result of this experiment.
If her arms are looking strong, that's why.
Filled with glistening oil.
So they sat in there, and there was 2 of them because you can only do it for like 10 minutes before you need a rest. It's, it's not that easy. And then so they do that. We film the whole thing, and then the episode comes out. And one thing you do when you shoot anything, or we do, is you go through a color grading process at the end. And in the color grading process,
darken the darks, make the lighters a little light, adjust the middle, add some color.
Yeah, what we found was after the color was graded and everything looked good, we'd crush the blacks down.
You literally cannot see anything.
You can't see anything going through the tubes no matter what. Bubbles
you can't even
or nothing.
you can barely even see the tubes, dude.
Yeah, you can't see the tubes. So, Megan, we're sorry we had you do all of that for nothing.
Yeah. Yay. And there's always fun stuff like that, right? Like anytime you see a movie, you're just seeing what is on camera. You don't see the stuff that's happening around it. So we did this fun little skit for Crimson Vow where Josh and I are driving and getting bad GPS directions. And if you notice the car kind of like, oh yeah, we did another car thing with the Brothers War as well. And the car's moving, right, a little bit, like it's got the jiggle, you're on the road, there's some bumps and stuff.
Yeah, you got to synthesize the suspension of the car, right?
Yeah,
so
otherwise you're just sort of locked in place and it doesn't look very realistic.
Yeah, so what you end up doing is you've got the camera there, and then you have people, and they're just going like this on the car.
Yeah.
Every
or they're
few
on the
seconds.
front. Yeah, and they can't do it at the same ride, so they're like...
That's their whole day.
And then there's someone else that's got a light that's just going... Ring. Meow. Meow. That's always fun.
That wasn't Megan. She didn't have to do that part, I don't think.
Yeah, we gave her a break.
Yeah, we gave her a break. It also reminds me of in All Will Be One, do you remember at the beginning there was this earthquake portion where we're like, oh no, it's shaking. Everything's falling apart.
And then we land in the new set, which is like the destroyed game night set.
Yeah, and then we're in Phyrexia, like somehow the walls have crumbled, and we ended up in Phyrexia.
Craig's homeland, yeah.
Yeah, well the funny thing was, to do the earthquake, we did the same thing.
We just had every single person in the office come and grab a different piece of the set, hide from the camera, and just jiggle. And
so
then
you can see people laying on the ground in the middle there.
Yeah.
Because they had to be out of the shot. So we're like, lay down there and just shake the shelves.
Yeah, and then Jake and Jordan, I think, were on the cameras just like...
And then the people on the lights were blinking the lights on off. So we had like 16 people in this room just shaking stuff. And we had to shoot this like 10 times.
10 times for both sides of coverage. And every time everything fell off, it's like, all right, pick it all up, put it back on the thing.
Oh, yeah. I think a deck box like fell off and hit Gabriel like in the head.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Good thing we have insurance.
So yeah, that's movie magic, as they say.
I mean, we're lucky we have a big team we can call. We can be like, just get everybody in here.
Yeah.
So we can shake this room for half an hour.
And the funny thing is, too, like, when we moved to the new set, we're in this giant warehouse, and everyone's like, oh, the production value was so sick. There's a cool echo that was happening.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're in this new blown-up place. And it's like, no, that was actually just the echo of being in the place. But thank you for the compliment for something we did not intend.
I think one of the top comments was, it's really cool how they added that echo so that it sounds like they're... And the funny thing was, in editing, we were like, can we get rid of this echo? It sounds horrible. And we're like, we can't. We can't.
All right, well, we're gonna live with it.
And then we're like, everybody liked it. Yeah. Totally on purpose. That reminds me, lately we've been doing this thing.
Yeah.
And you saw it in that episode where we're on Phyrexia. And we also did it in March of the Machine. We've been doing these big backgrounds.
Graham and Kathleen.
Yeah, so these backgrounds...
They're not green screen. They're not LED walls. They are an old school technique called rear screen projection. So you can just see that there are just two giant screens like you would have in like an outdoor theater or something. And then behind them, on the ground behind them, are projectors projecting up an image. And it creates the illusion of depth. And here is our VFX team programming and custom animating, actually, the thing to send into both projectors to make it work.
Yeah, this looks like a stock footage shot for like a film school or something. Yeah, so they're creating a 3D environment in Unreal Engine, which is a video game
engine, yeah.
Engine
maker, yeah.
Yeah, and then so we can virtually place the camera, tell it where it's looking, and then create those backgrounds. So this is something we've been playing with a lot. In fact, back to the Lord of the Rings episode.
Yeah, we were not in our actual set for this episode because we were Hobbit size, right?
Yeah. So we're creating the scaling illusion of we're really small by making everything else big, right? Like everybody sort of knows how that's done. But in order to pull this off, we would have had to rebuild our set at 150% scale, which is going to be really hard to do. We would have had to get like that Ultra Pro wall scroll at 150% size.
And everything else.
So instead what we did was we just 3D mapped the background set. And we give it away here because you can see the roundness of the window behind Jacob and Jimmy there, which is not how our normal set is. And we did it also rear screen projection. So we were able to just fake the fact that the set was even behind us. We're not on the set here. We've just got big projectors behind us, and they could project the image at 150% size.
Yeah, and if you look at the table, that and the chairs we had to build to be extra tall, as well as the backs of the chairs to create the illusion.
Yeah, Lady Danger built all the backs of the chairs and the table and everything at that size, but she didn't have to build the entire room, only those objects. An interesting thing is if you look at, see how there's little stools where you sit for the chairs?
Yeah, but the backs of the chairs aren't exactly lined up to them.
Yeah, so if you actually put the stools centered to the chairs, it didn't look right. We had to sit slightly sort of cocked to the side of where the actual back of the chair was to make it look real.
Yeah, we couldn't lean back the entire time, otherwise it would fall off. And then for the interviews as well, we had to raise up the height and put them again on that big chair, and so that you can see Sholo there with Manson. It really does look tiny.
It was fun. Every time we walked on the set, we would laugh. But that's sort of how we pulled that trick off.
All right.
Okay, we're going to go to our last section here before the Q&A, and we'll try and move through it kind of quickly so we have enough time for some questions.
So,
if you have any questions for us, think them up. Where is the microphone? Oh,
I think it's right
middle.
there in the middle, yeah.
Okay. All right. So the last thing we want to talk about was ideas. We're going to call them pie in the sky ideas that we haven't pulled off yet, that we're sort of thinking about, or that
I've been talking about for a while, yeah.
Or we haven't figured out how to pull it off. That we've got a lot of those. The example we have of this is the extreme product testing stuff we did for the professor.
And his big Kickstarter, yeah.
Yeah, when he did the academic deck box Kickstarter. Now, for years, Jimmy and I had been joking. We'd always wanted to do a video making fun of the professor's product review stuff. Because he's like, I shake the box, I turn it upside down, I put it in my backpack, and I actually bring it to F&M for a few months. And we were like, what if we were like, we want to drop it off of a 50-story skyscraper.
We want to shoot it with a 80 caliber rifle. We want to run it over
with a train, and then be like, pick it up. It's fine, A+,
Ding.
Yeah. We always had talked about that. So when he was actually doing the Kickstarter for his deck box, we were like, oh, finally we can use this joke that we've kind of been thinking about for years and actually pull it off.
So we have a few of these ideas that we wanted to just tell you all, and then maybe someday the idea will happen, but it will require a mix of a perfect timing and something else happening.
Yeah, so we don't have any slides for this stuff, obviously, because it doesn't exist yet.
Yeah. Back in the day, we did a show called Kitchen Table Fables, which was like our sort of skits for Magic themed comedy.
Yeah. Has anybody seen the Kitchen Table Fables stuff we did long time ago?
Yeah, this is like 8 years ago now almost.
They're like little sketches where we sort of pretended you went into the world of the game. Like when Jimmy summons two soldiers, they actually pop up in the air like in front of him, like two people with swords. And then he's like, go attack. And
they're like, I don't know. I'm kind of
There's
scared.
a giant over there. That's just going to kill me. I don't really want to attack over there.
They're like, well, here, wear this collar. It's a basilisk collar.
And they're like, why? What's this basilisk collar going to do? It gives you death touch.
Yeah.
How?
Just go over there and poke him, and then the giant dies.
So we have more ideas for Kitchen Table Fables. The one I like the best is, okay, I'm going to pitch it to you. Ready?
Elevator. Ding.
All right.
Hey, how's it going?
So it's Jimmy, and a superhero-style entrance from an angel. They just come warping and land on the ground. There's a shockwave. It's Avacyn. Her wings unfurled. My lord, I'm here to do your bidding. What do you wish of me? Jimmy's like, cool. I want you to attack my opponent. Yes, my liege. I will attack them forthwith.
Away.
Yes, right now. Oh, but hold on. First of all, before you go, can you take this sword of feast and famine and go ahead and yes, with this sword of feast and famine, I will smite them even harder, my lord. But before you go, you can't actually attack yet because you don't have haste. Oh, that's correct, my lord. So put these lightning greaves on. Okay, thank you. Yes, these boots are very... Okay, and then can you also hold this Loxodon Warhammer so I can gain life? You will... yes,
absolutely, my lord.
I have two hands. I can do that. Yes. Okay, and also this axe so that it'll give you menace. Well, I don't know where I'm going to hold it. Just put it in the crook of your arm there. Okay. And then and have Jimmy proceed to suit her up with like 5 or 6
things.
So she's run. Okay, now attack, and she's like,
Okay, clunk, 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 clunk.
That was one of our Kitchen Table Fable ideas.
Yeah. We've always also thought about doing a big Broadway-style opening for a game nights where all of us are singing and dancing. The set explode, the walls fall down, the set explodes open.
We actually got pretty close. I think it was right before the pandemic, maybe, or last year.
Yeah.
For the Christmas episode, we were trying to pull this off. We were going to hire a team of like 50 dancers. We were going to rewrite
some lot.
Yeah, we're going to rewrite some parody Christmas music to like add magic puns and stuff and do like a full-on Broadway musical opening. but it's harder to do even than we thought.
Yeah, and
I
turns
still
out
want to do it someday.
if it's a copyrighted song, you're gonna have more trouble.
Oh yeah, that's right. We tried to parody the Mariah Carey song.
Yeah, All I Want for Christmas Is You.
I'm even scared to say it out loud because we found out that she will come after you.
Yeah,
so.
she wanted to title herself the Queen of Christmas at one time legally, and lost that fight.
We've been throwing around the idea of like a fictional sitcom style show revolving around magic or an LGS, kind of like maybe Cheers or something that takes place in an LGS.
Seinfeld.
Or Community that takes place in an LGS, something like that.
Yeah, a follow-up episode to our stats episode has always been on our mind, but it just is a mountain of work to try and get that done.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw our old stats episodes, but we had sort of analyzed a bunch of Commander games and asked a bunch of questions and taken that data and been able to say things like we mentioned a lot, like turn 1 through 3 Soul Ring actually kind of lowers your chance to win the game because the other players team up on you. And we want to do that on a larger scale because there's so much more Commander gameplay now that could be analyzed.
Yeah. And then finally, like Commander itself has so many other sort of variants that you can play it with. There's like Secret Partners, Hidden Commander, Star, King, Emperor, all those formats. But it's tough to figure out a place for that to fit in and make sense for it. So those are all things that we're still thinking about and still trying to explore.
So we're always thinking ahead of cool stuff we can do in the future. Hopefully we can pull some of it off. Hopefully you've enjoyed our little storytelling segment here. Thanks everybody for joining us. If you've got any questions, we are happy.
Yeah, I think you just can line up behind the microphone, and we'll try and get through as many as possible. Yeah, but
it looks like we got about 15 minutes to go here.
Yeah. Hit it.
Nice, it's on. Thank you very much for sharing all the stories. It's really nice to see what goes on behind the scenes because you don't normally see that. So that's really cool.
Thank you.
So I run a Dutch YouTube channel focusing on Commander. So it's all in Dutch for the local Dutchies. And our setup right now is super janky. We got 3 different cameras. We got these cheap lavalier mics, like a super janky overhead thing.
Yeah.
But if you wanna upgrade your setup, what is the stuff that you would recommend in investing in, like cameras, better mics, or what would you?
I recommend investing in doing more episodes and just filming and doing as much as possible. If the cameras you have are workable and it's not unlistenable or unwatchable, then I wouldn't worry so much about spending a lot of money on camera equipment, because also a lot of times camera equipment becomes obsolete or there's something better in a year or 2 years. And if you overinvest early into something you don't actually need, because it may be that you just actually need someone to help you edit it, and that's more important than all the new equipment. So I would evaluate what gets you to make the best video in terms of its actual content instead of what makes it look the best.
I would say too, it's expensive to buy new equipment. Microphones, cameras, that's not cheap. It is not that expensive to move your lights around or craft the room that you're in a little bit better. So if your sound's not great, my guess would be that you're not baffling the sound correctly in the room you're in. And a better microphone is not going to solve that problem either. So if you were going to solve echo or something like that, a lot of times just putting some padding up, which is not expensive, right?
Carpet on the ground.
Carpet on the ground. I used to just take the mattress off of my bed, put it sideways against the wall so that I was speaking into a mattress rather than a hard wall. And there's a lot of people that just record their VO in their closet because there's a lot of clothes in there, and soft, uneven surfaces will catch most sound and not bounce it back at the microphone. So that's a lot cheaper than buying another microphone. Now, it's a little bit of work. You got to put the mattress on and off your bed, but you might find that that's a bigger problem than your microphone. Now, if you do all of that stuff and you still think that your mic is not as good, now maybe it's time to upgrade it. Cameras are the same way. If you got a lot of people have a problem with glare on their cards. That's got nothing to do with the quality of your camera and everything to do with where your lights are placed. In general, you don't want lights above your table. You want them off to the side so that they're not bouncing right into the camera. And a lot of times just moving your lights around or just throwing more light on the subject will make your image look a lot better, and that's a lot cheaper than buying new cameras. If you do that and your image is still not great, now maybe you do need a better camera. But make sure you do the little cheap things before you do the big expensive things, because you have a really high chance of doing the expensive thing and still having the problem. You didn't fix it.
Yep.
Great tips. Thank you very much. And just one more question then. So one thing we run into often is balancing decks, because everyone wants to bring their favorite deck, but you want to balance it out so everyone has a great experience. How do you do that on the show?
These days, we have a team of people that specifically focus on making decks from the ground up that are balanced. If you have decks that have already been made, then I think you could test out more, right? You could play practice games and have honest conversations. As long as the players themselves are open to either powering down or adding something to make it more efficient, then I think you're in a fine spot. But that's a lot of it really just comes down to making sure that the players themselves want to have a balanced experience. Because if that's not the case, then it's going to be hard to convince someone to like take out a dockside extortionist or whatever it is that's causing that imbalance.
Yeah, I think also, because we ran into this early, not everybody can have a team that their job is to sort of balance decks, right? That's a luxury we've gotten to. But for years and years, we just played the decks out of our collection and made small changes to try and balance them. But it all comes from the mentality of like, if everybody that's involved with any piece of content is understanding that the most important thing is the content is the best for the audience. It's not the most important thing that your deck looks cool or you win or whatever. The outcome we want is the best outcome for the audience. And therefore, if you got to take dockside out, that's because it's going to make the best video, right? It can't be like, it's not about your deck and it's not about you and it's not about anybody that's in this pod. It is about the best outcome for the video. Listen, there's going to be variance. It's Magic. Some decks are going to pop off, even though, because we've had tons of videos where people go, well, that deck's obviously more powerful than the other decks. And it's like, well, it looks more powerful in that one game, but we know from testing it normally isn't.
Yeah.
But you just try and mitigate that as much as possible.
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you very much, and thank you for your work on the command center. Really appreciate it. So
Thanks for the
Thank you.
questions.
All right, next up.
How you doing?
Hey, it may be a silly question, but is there any story behind the red spicy sauce bottle you always have behind in your podcast?
Yeah, so it's super early episode game nights. First two or three.
We've seen
early,
it in the footage and with
in the background.
Yeah, the background.
Yeah. So very, very early on, we had some product from Ultra Pro, and one of them was a nope, a life pad or something.
A life pad and sleeves.
Yeah, and they had sriracha on them, and Josh loves sriracha more than anyone I've ever met in my entire life. And so we thought it'd be really funny to have the sriracha sleeves and the deck.
I wore a shirt.
And the shirt, and I had like the dog sleeves, right? And so it was just fun to like, we're theming out everything around this. And then there was another episode where I like poured salt into a literal jar of water and drank it. So the idea of being
because he was really salty that episode.
Yeah, really salty against Zell. Salty and spicy, right, are like common terms in Magic. So that sort of became like our calling cards in a way. And so we decided to put the bottles back there as just like a callback to those early episodes.
Thank you very much.
Yep, of course.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
Thank you very much for the answer. I also wanted to ask about the stretcher sauce, so thank you for,
nice.
for it. But I have another question, which is actually two. So the first question is, do you have a bucket list that you want to achieve in a game? You more or less answered this at the end of the show.
Of people we want in the game?
Not
things we want to accomplish.
Things we want to do.
You want to do in a game or video or show. And I'm asking this because in a Magic the Gathering Commander game there is usually one winner, and the other three guys or ladies are not winners. And I think it is very important to make them also happy. So I'm thinking about an achievement system or a hidden agenda system where the players who are not winning can say that, oh, I have achieved something. I have created 20 elves in a Lathril deck. Or there can be an achievement even for the winners. So for Josh, there is an achievement that you achieved by drawing 99 cards and not losing the game yesterday.
Yeah, like hidden achievements.
Technically about 40 of those were milled, but yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. I think like we're always looking for ways to make games more interesting. And whenever we play with like the unsets, for instance, are great times for people to have like, oh, I didn't win, but I did this, and it was awesome. So I think there is always room for that. It's hard to sort of plan that beforehand, though, because every player has their own individual wants and all that stuff. So I think in-game achievements is a fun way of going about it. For sure.
I don't know that I have any achievements in games that I'm trying to think of anything where I'm like, I really wish I could do that.
I generally like when I'm able to kill myself and not die to someone else if I'm going to die anyway.
You've achieved that many times, though.
Yeah, it's a great achievement because it's my turn.
Keep achieving it.
Yeah, keep achieving it.
Yeah, not miss a land drop.
Yeah, not miss a land drop. Yeah, ding, ding, ding. Xbox achievement unlocked.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, hello.
Hello.
Hello, my name's Richard, and I'd like to say thank you because I returned to Magic by watching your videos and to learn the format and the rules. An issue I faced when I started to learn Commander was that I would go to any Commander game, whether it's my local store or with friends, and I would envision myself being in an episode of Game Nights or the Command Zone. And I would expect every Commander game I play to be like the show.
Right.
And it kind of got in the way of the real fun, where if there wasn't much table talk, or if I was mana screwed, then I kind of failed the whole thing.
I
but
see.
Now it's kind of fine, but when I recommend friends to your videos to learn the format, I kind of worry that because they're watching a lot of videos, the same may happen to them, where they would kind of have that mindset of, if it's not like the show, then what's the point? So I was wondering if you had any advice, kind of for me now or for my friends, to detach themselves from the show and kind of find the real fun of playing a Commander game with your friends.
It's a good question. So I think when we first started the show, I was like, wow, this is a great thing because you get to see that moment that is like really iconic to Commander players, where everyone goes, oh my God, what? No way. Holy crap, I can't believe that happened. And the show is a way for people to watch it happen for other players and then go, cool, I can identify and connect with that. I think like one of the important things about that idea is that everyone's individual version of what that is still unique to them. And so if you can ask yourself, like, why do I love Magic? What is the thing that makes me the happiest? That should be your game nights moment, not what happens on the show, if that makes sense. And I think every Magic player has a list of things that they could go off, which is like, these are the moments that I love, that define me, that like were the reason I still play Commander today. And when you watch a show like Game Nights, I mean, maybe it's just reframing the mentality to be a little more like, I love seeing them have that moment because it reminded me of something that I have, instead of I need to have that because I haven't had it before. Like any moment that's been on the show, you probably had your own version of that. So I would say connect with that more than what the show is showing you of someone else doing it.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
First of all, thank you very much to come here to Barcelona, to my home city. So,
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Every time you cast a mythic card or your commander, there's a cool animation with voice lines and very well VFX and all that kind of amazing stuff. Where comes the idea to make every card that different and unique in terms of animation to the other ones?
So we have a team of people that we have meetings about it. So the game has to be played, obviously, and we do all the interviews, and then pretty soon afterwards, we sit down and we sit with our team. So it's Jake, Murph, Manson, our VFX people, Sam, Evan, Jamie, Jordan, who are our writers, Rachel and Lady, just people that are creative. We have this big meeting, and we go through and we say, okay, we think about a few things. One is like, what's important to the game? What's at important points in the game? What are cards that we are likely to see again in future games? Because we want to be economical, and if we create a VFX, it'd be nice if I could use it again, 3 months down the road when somebody casts that again. And then we can only do so many because we don't have unlimited resources. So we just choose out which ones we think. Oh, I should say also, some cards are easier to animate than other cards. You look at them and you're like, I don't know what we could do with this. But if it's a dragon, we already know it's going to roar and breathe fire. But then also, we've had a lot of dragons roar and breathe fire. So if we can't think of something better than that, maybe we don't do this one. So there's a lot that sort of goes into it. We sort of do a wish list. If you could do anything we wanted, we'd do these. Okay, what's realistic from that list? And then which ones are harder to do, which are easier. We do a rough schedule of how much time we think this one's going to take 8 hours. This will take 16. The crazy 3D one sometimes can take, that's going to be 40 hours. And we do a little budget of time and say, we have this amount of time to spend. Is it worth it to spend an entire week of one of our VFX people's time on that one thing? And sometimes it's like Kai or something, and we're like, it's going to be really cool. We'll do it.
It's a commander that someone plays too, right? That's a little bigger too.
Yeah, so it's a big conversation that happens over a couple of meetings where we kind of narrow it down. And there's 4 cards we know we're going to do. They're the commanders. And so we kind of budget those out first, get the VFX people started, and then we go through which ones are going to talk. What would they say? If we can't think of anything cool to say, they're probably not going to talk. Some are like, if we can't think of anything to have them say, they probably won't make good animations because they're not doing much.
Yeah.
If they're just sort of standing there looking off the edge of a cliff, like, what are we going to do? So
Corsair of Crew Fix?
Yeah. But if you can have 'em, if you can think of a funny joke or a pun, then all of a sudden it does work. So it is a lot of just creative meetings and, you know, and writing and just time spent thinking about it. So we'll have an initial meeting, then we'll sort of say, okay, everybody think about it. We'll meet again in a few days. You know, cull all those ideas down, and then, yeah, that's kind of how it goes.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Yep.
I think we have time for one more question.
Perfect. Hello again.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Can you move the mic down to, yeah.
Hello?
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. When you first started game nights, what was your initial goal for it? And did you ever think that it would lead you to what it is now?
Ooh, interesting. You want to take this one?
Did you have an initial goal?
No, mine was, oh sweet, we get to play the pre-cons early. Dope, cool, goal accomplished.
I mean, it kind of is one of those things where, you know, those pie in the sky ideas we were talking about. We'd been doing the podcast for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And we were fans of Magic and Magic content, and at that time, I think draft videos were like the most popular type of videos for Magic. And Jimmy and I and our friends, Craig was there, would sit around and while we're playing, just kind of chat about content and talk about gameplay videos and sort of what we saw as the hurdles and the issues that they were facing and why they were, you know, it was tough to do.
Yeah, is it better to do it this way? Why isn't this type of content existed yet?
You know what we should do? You know, you'd interview the person and then you'd intercut the interviews, and you know, over time we just kind of gathered enough little ideas that I think we were ready to make a gameplay show, and we kind of needed an excuse to do it. And 2016 Commander product was just when they happened to send us the product early for the first time. Because we had talked, Jimmy knew people at Wizards, he was doing like their launch videos and stuff, but we didn't have a strong connection with them. They never sent us any product of any kind, and they reached out and said, hey, do you want to get the Commander product early? And I think this was like 6 weeks before it came out. For us, that was like, yeah, crazy. And they were like, we don't know what you're going to do with it, but we just figured we'd give it to you, and if you can make some content around it, that's great. And that was kind of the moment we said, well, we've been talking about that gameplay show.
I've got all this production equipment.
Let's try it. Let's see what happens. So I don't think we really had, I don't think in our wildest dreams we thought this was what was going to become of it.
Yeah,
I mean,
that Post Malone would become our friend or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, I do not think it was going to be like, you know, Hollywood TV people and like it was going to rise to this level at all. We were just going to create a gameplay show and see if we could make Commander entertaining at all.
Yeah.
Could we just do that?
And apply the base theory behind everything we make, which is like, if you're going to make it, can you always improve upon it and make it better each time?
Yeah.
So I think that those two things combined together led us to where we are today. And we're very, very grateful for all of the just attention and the ability to do what we've been able to do, and hopefully can keep improving it. But yeah,
and grateful for all of you for watching and for showing up to our panel. Thank you so much.
This is it.
Thanks, everybody. We
Panel's
appreciate
over.
it.
Thank you all for your questions. Thanks for coming out, everyone.
Thanks for all your questions. Thanks for coming. Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you, everybody.
Hopefully everybody has a good time the rest of the time at MagicCon Barcelona. And
we have a meet and greet tomorrow as well from
10 to noon tomorrow. We'll be back at the signing stage. So
the line was capped today, so if you want to get there and you haven't met us and want something signed or whatever, just make sure you get there a little early.
First thing in the morning would be the best shot for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thanks everybody.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Enjoy the rest of your con.